Welcome to Face Values, the podcast where we peel back the layers of cosmetic surgery and skincare to help you understand how your skin is aging and what you can do about it. I'm Dr. David Jack. I'm a cosmetic doctor and skincare brand founder. I'm based in London. I've got clinics in London and Edinburgh. I've got a real interest in just understanding more about how the skin ages. So I'm going to be joined by lots of guests who are real experts in the field. So I hope you enjoy and keep tuning in. Tonight I'm joined by Dr. Charlotte Gribbin, who is a specialist in my clinic in Belgravia. She has a specialist interest in menopausal and perimenopausal skin, and she has been treating this for about 16 years. She's been an aesthetic doctor for that time, but before that she was actually working in cardiology, so she's got a really sound medical background. So I'm delighted to be joined by her, and I hope you enjoy this. It's all about menopause and perimenopausal skin. So Charlotte, menopausal skin, you obviously have worked in aesthetics for maybe longer than I have, I'm not sure, but
yeah, about the same length of time, I would say.
Yeah, and this is
menopausal skin. I've been interested in for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Problem skin, I've been interested in for a long time, but it's in the last 5 years, I suppose, that I've really realised that menopausal skin sort of fits into its own category, and it is different to the problems we see at other ages and stages. So yeah. And so many of my patients are in that zone that, I have to keep very up to date and be very aware of the kind of problems they're facing.
Yeah. So what sort of changes would you say are the key things that people come to you about?
It was funny. I was just doing a little bit of prep before I came along today, and it was reminding me that for some people who are approaching menopause or going into that transition phase of perimenopause, sometimes the first symptom is that their skin stops behaving the way they expect it to behave. Mm-hmm. So it can be as simple as my skin has suddenly gotten dry. Oh, I must book a facial for next month. Or I have broken capillaries on my face. Or why, this is the big one, why is my skin suddenly reacting to the moisturiser I've been using for 5 years? And they're the kind of things that are the sort of day-to-day issues that arise with menopausal skin. But there are loads of other things as well, as you know. There are actual problems that arise. Rosacea becomes more common. Acne can be a big problem for up to 25% of menopausal women. Eczema. People who never had eczema before suddenly develop contact dermatitis to things, again, they've been using for years. But reactivity, sensitivity, all of those things. But the biggest one that starts the flags waving, something going on with my skin, is often a reaction to a product they've been using for years, or sudden dryness that isn't solved by the usual things that they do. So it's often their beauty therapist or their aesthetic doctor who says, "Ooh, what age are you?"
Yeah.
And suddenly the jigsaw pieces start coming together. And so it can, for a lot of people, be one of the first things that starts to change. So yeah, it's important.
So you'd say that it's a lot of the time it's actually little subtle changes like that
very subtle
that drive things. Yeah.
But in actual fact, what's happening is that we all know that estrogen starts to decline, and that is the definition of perimenopause, which is the lead up to menopause. Your estrogen levels start to change, but your progesterone and testosterone levels, which are the other two big hormones involved, they change as well, but their decline is slower than estrogen's decline. So the big thing that happens is the amount of estrogen you have in relation to the amount of progesterone and testosterone that you have changes. So the balance is off. You have more testosterone in relation to estrogen than you did, more progesterone in relation to estrogen than you did. And from the skin's point of view, that has big implications on the three main cells. And the three main cells in the skin, not to be too sciencey, but the big one is keratinocytes. They're the cells on the surface of the skin. Melanocytes, which we all know are involved in tanning and pigmentation. And then the big one for us as doctors, of course, are the fibroblasts.
Yeah.
So each of those cells has a role, but all of them are really, really influenced by estrogen because they all have estrogen receptors. And then you have other things like hair follicles. Our skin is covered in hair follicles, and they are really controlled by things like testosterone and progesterone. And they're not just producing hairs, they also hold the sebum glands that produce oil for the skin. So you can see how all of these things can get really triggered and messed up when you start to change the balance of those really, really important hormones.
So with all of these changes, why not just take HRT and be done with it?
Well, I'm a big fan of HRT, just to be clear.
Yeah.
I'm very aware that it's not for everybody. That's number one.
Sure.
It can be very difficult to find the right HRT for you. And also, HRT is limited in that it cannot replicate the hormonal balance and the hormonal levels that you had when you were 35 or when you were pre-menopausal.
Yeah.
So whether you're on prescription tablets or bioidentical hormones, all of them are aiming to create the best possible system in your body that replicates what you used to have. But the truth is it doesn't ever. But another paper I was reading today reminded me that being on HRT, and I'm not pushing it on anybody, but being on HRT where your estrogen levels are well controlled can reduce the collagen decline by as much as 80%, or the rate of decline by as much as 80% over those first 5 years. That's actually a very big number.
Amazing. Yeah.
Which brings me back to those 3 cells. The third one we mentioned, the fibroblasts, the reason they are so important is they are the engine that creates collagen. So when they're affected, and they are hugely dependent on estrogen, collagen starts to decline very rapidly. You lose 30% of all your collagen, not just in your skin, but your body collagen, in the first 5 years of menopause. And that's why women often feel like their face has gone over a cliff. They're tootling along, ooh, I'm aging really nicely. I'm so lucky I've held on to my jawline. And literally, in a short period of time, they look in the mirror and they go, where did my jawline go? Where did the curves on my face go? And it can happen that dramatically.
Yeah.
There are other things going on as well, obviously. But so HRT is skin protective. We do know that for sure. But scarily, I do a lot of talks at menopause meetings about skin and things we can do. And I always do a trawl through the literature before I speak to anybody. There has been nothing done on menopausal skin or published in a meaningful way for years and years. It's incredible. Like the best paper I could find that was relatively recent today was 2017. But the bulk of stuff that actually made a difference came out 2005, 2007 kind of time. And we haven't advanced our understanding much at all in the last 15, 20 years.
Why do you think that is?
I'll tell you why I think. Is because, do you remember, you're too young probably, but back in the 80s and 90s, there was a massive pushback against HRT.
I remember,
The huge paper came out and it made the suggestion that HRT, instead of being cardioprotective, instead of being protective of the heart and the vascular system, that actually there were more heart attacks in the groups who were taking HRT. But the problem was, if you speak to the author of that trial, well, there were many authors because it was a multi-centre trial, but if you speak to the actual named first author on that, he says that it was completely misinterpreted. And a headline, I think it was the Washington Post. It was I was in America at the time.
Right.
It was a very reputable paper that ran with this. And it literally, the number of people on HRT dropped so dramatically in that decade, and it has had a massive impact. That's actually when the big switch to bioidentical hormones started to happen.
Okay.
As a result of that article. But I've seen that man interviewed really recently, and he just thinks it was such a disservice to women and to women's health.
Totally.
Yeah, because they talk
on
about
study.
one study, lies, damn lies, and statistics, and this was a misreading of the stats. It was,
Really,
but so we haven't moved forward in our knowledge, but at least we're talking about it.
Yeah. And what about things that also in terms of HRT, things like breast cancer risk, ovarian
Yep.
cancer, these sorts
Yep.
of things, is that a factor that is still a consideration?
It
or
is
it,
very
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Yeah, of course it is. And
Yeah.
if there is a risk in your family,
Mm.
or if you personally have a history of a hormone-dependent cancer, especially breast, then you will not be. You'll be advised not to do
Yes.
HRT,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and taken down another road. And if you think about, one of the standard treatments we have for post-breast cancer patients, for patients in recovery, is a drug called tamoxifen,
Yeah.
which, of course, it's a very unusual drug in that it blocks estrogen in the breast and supports estrogen in the uterus.
Yeah.
So it's one of these selective estrogen drugs.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of talk about perhaps coming up with a HRT that is selectively chooses the estrogen receptors that it targets. But that's for another conversation. But
But as you said, there's very little research going
there
on at
is,
the moment, which
because the priority for
the
these things
priorities.
is always cancer,
Yeah.
and rightly so.
Yeah. And along the lines of HRT, we hear more and more about people sort of being supplemented with testosterone.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that, and can it be a helpful thing?
Of course it can. But remember, HRT, if the patient is still having periods, they have to be on progesterone
Yeah.
as well. So that's the number one
Yes,
important point to
yeah.
make, is
Yep.
that you have to have progesterone to protect your uterus from an excess of estrogen,
Yeah.
we'll say. But testosterone became, it was an old friend of mine actually who brought bioidenticals into the country,
Right,
a man
okay.
called John Studd.
Yeah.
He was a legend
Yeah.
in
Quite a
gynecology.
name.
Did you know him?
No, I didn't, but it's quite a name for someone who's
and
involved
his
in
story,
hormone research.
he introduced bioidenticals to the UK and sort of was instrumental in the resurgence of HRT for a lot of people, especially
Interesting.
around London. But he was a big fan of testosterone because his goal for all of his clients was that they'd have a normal libido. And that his first question, if you went to him as a patient, was, "How's your marriage?" And he meant it. He thought testosterone saved marriages because of its effect on libido. But it's not just libido, it's energy as well. But I have to I have a very negative experience with testosterone myself. I'll tell you about it if you want, and you can edit it out later. But the really important thing to do if you are thinking about going down the HRT road is to have a consultation with an expert.
Yeah.
And don't let anybody start you on hormones until you've done your blood levels.
Yeah.
And particularly, don't let anybody start you on testosterone until you know what your natural testosterone levels are, because you need to have low testosterone to benefit from a testosterone supplement. The other big thing about testosterone, if your levels are not low and you take testosterone, the other big thing that happens, it has, synthetic testosterone seems to have a very big effect on hair. So it doesn't tend to cause acne in somebody who's not getting acne. But it miniaturizes hair follicles in women. It causes excess shedding. And it doesn't tend to cause actual baldness, but thinning and sparse hair. And you just, again, you need to be really careful with testosterone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And a lot of people in the kind of lead up to the menopause are starting to notice changes in things that are kind of the overarching description is the perimenopause.
Absolutely.
How would you kind of approach that, and what would the kind of steps and diagrams?
So just to
be of that?
explain, pure menopause is defined as starting 12 months after your last period.
Okay.
And the period of time in the lead up to that is known as perimenopause. And perimenopause starts when your estrogen levels start to decline.
Yeah.
And that decline in the early years may not be dramatic. So the average age for the onset of perimenopause is 45. But it can happen earlier or it can happen later. And if you want to know when menopause or perimenopause is likely to affect you, ask your mother.
Yeah.
There's a massive correlation between the age your mother had these symptoms and when you're going to have these symptoms. If your mother had an early menopause, maybe keep an eye out for it a little bit earlier than your friends.
Yeah.
But about 90%, actually the numbers are really high. 45 is a key age. And perimenopause is starting for about 90%, as many as 90% of women by the age of 45.
Interesting.
And it lasts for anything from 4 to 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a period of transition.
Uh-huh.
It's not an illness. It's literally, it's just like moving from childhood to adulthood.
Yep.
So it's puberty, but in reverse.
Reverse. Yeah.
And that's how I describe the skin problems to my patients, is this is puberty in reverse.
Yeah.
So all the things that were an issue in teenage and early 20s skin can be an issue during menopausal, perimenopausal years. But, and this is the sad thing, because we're losing collagen, the ability of our skin to bounce back from these things is very different.
Yeah.
So, yes. So that's what perimenopause is, and that's what menopause is.
And are there any sort of early changes that people might start to see at the beginning of the sort of perimenopause that are maybe an indication that it's a good idea to start doing certain things to the skin to kind of help the journey through that?
The two things we mentioned earlier, the dryness and the sudden irritability to a product that has been an old friend.
Yeah.
Key things you can do are stay away from products that have perfume, that have too many ingredients. Astringent products. You think when you start developing breakouts at 46, 49, oh, where's my alcohol toner? That's what I used when I was 18.
Yeah.
No. So, gentle skin products are really important. Your skin is going to be dry. Your skin barrier, which is what holds the moisture and the hydration within your skin, that's going to change.
Yeah.
So, often what you need is a slightly more gentle cleansing regime. No perfumes, as I said.
Yeah.
Be very careful with astringent products. We have other ways of managing oiliness rather than, using a lot of alcohol on your face. Really, really good quality moisture. And that's, you'll hear David talking about ceramides from now till the end of time. There's a reason for that. It's because in menopausal skin, for some reason, ceramides do more good than almost any other moisturizer or humectant. So the key things would be keep it simple. And then, as with everything else we talk about, there are 3 key things we should be doing. So sunscreen is number 1.
Yeah.
The reason for that is it's not just about preventing skin cancer, although that now does become important in the sense that the risks are changing when you get to your late 40s, early 50s. So that's important. So you need sunscreen for that. But your skin is getting thinner. And your melanocytes, the cells that control pigment, they are no longer under the control of estrogen as much as they were. So they can go a bit rogue. And your skin is thinner. So you're more prone to sun damage. And then if you get sun damage, it'll show up more because your skin is thinner. So sunscreen, number 1. Number 2, retinol. Or anything in the retinol family. In menopause, because your skin can be quite sensitive, you do have to choose your retinoid carefully. And also your regime might have to be a little bit different. An awful lot of my 40-year-olds are on a really solid retinol regime. And they've been on it for a few years already and they're well settled.
Sure.
If I look then at my patients who are in their late 40s, early 50s, we might have changed their retinol routine. They might be down to 3 times a week actually. Because we're doing, on those other nights when they're not doing retinol, we're getting in there with very moisturising nighttime regimes.
Yes.
And we might be exfoliating in a different way than we were in when they were in their early 40s. Never ever exfoliate with anything that has grit in it. So mechanical exfoliation is an absolute no-no during perimenopause and menopause, because it damages the surface of the skin, and the skin is so much more sensitive and delicate that you can actually really mess up your skin barrier.
And say you have used those things and your skin's looking a bit irritated and stuff.
But that's what happens to everybody. You've been doing all this stuff and then suddenly it doesn't work for you. So remember, that's what we were saying. This could be a little hint oh gosh, my skin's changing. Why is it changing?
Yeah.
No problem. That's
Yeah.
absolutely because the beauty of our skin is its ability to heal. Then you really go back to basics.
Yeah.
That is back down to your perfume-free cleanser, your ceramide-packed moisturizer, and to have a little bit of patience with your skin.
Yeah.
Your skin heals, in 28 to 36 days, your skin will have completely turned over. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Now, if you have breakouts and they've gone out of control and you're getting scarring, or if your rosacea and your sensitivity is really, really troublesome, go and see somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Get some professional advice, because actually for some people they need something that's really tailored to them.
Sure.
There are general rules, as we
Yeah.
said, gentle skin care, no perfumes, etc. But for some situations, expert advice, one consultation might be all that's required, but that can be a really good investment.
Yeah, great. And in terms of treatments in clinic for perimenopausal and menopausal skin, what sort of things would you say that if a patient comes into you, they're starting to see some changes related to kind of collagen loss and things, what would be your kind of go-to with treatments?
Yeah, number one is optimize the skin. So we might go to one of our amazing beauty therapists and have regular medical grade facials.
Yep.
That's actually very beneficial.
Yeah.
Because everything you can do to keep that skin barrier and skin surface safe is good.
Yeah.
But as things like collagen declines and melanin increases, then you might want to consider doing other things. But what's great is, again, we have so many options now. So it's going to depend on exactly what your stage is, where you are in the process, but also what your basic skin type is, what your skin colour is, what your skincare routine is. So I have loads of things. We've so many things we can do. So if, for example, you're getting acne scarring because your collagen isn't healing as quickly as you'd like, one of my favourite things to do is microneedling with platelet-rich plasma, which is taking your natural growth factors from your blood, we spin it down, we get a lovely serum. I inject it as well, actually, especially for scarring patients. That's just an example of some of the lovely things we can do. But in addition to that, I think polynucleotides, everybody's sick of me talking about polynucleotides, but the reason I love them in menopausal skin is because they're anti-inflammatory. So they're great for calming down the rosaceas. They are really nice at managing pigmentation. And of course, their claim to fame is that they are collagen boosters. So for me, in a menopausal patient, I'm hitting 3 or 4 different indications within that one patient with a single product. So they are all done by mini teeny weeny injections all over the face. Some people do them with cannulas. I do all injections.
Yeah, me too.
Because I really want it very specifically in the dermis.
In the dermis,
And that's where they do the most good.
Yeah.
So you have things like that. But then, if you're talking about collagen, most people will say, but how do I fix this slackness on my jaw? And then you do have to start thinking about other things. So skin tightening. We love Morpheus 8.
Yes.
I know you love Morpheus 8. It's a lovely tool and works really well in perimenopausal patients, because if you've never had a treatment like this before and you're having it for the first time in your late 40s, early 50s, it just seems to give a lovely result. I love it. If you're slightly older, I think Endolift is really making its mark now.
Yes,
so that's another way of using laser slightly under the skin for very specific targeted skin tightening. Well, you know me, I love anything energy related anyway, because if you're using energy properly in the skin in a really precise way, it's almost a type of regenerative medicine. It's a way of saying to your skin, your tissues, tighten yourself, work yourself, wake up cells. And that's why I like it. So they fit in beautifully with things like the polynucleotides or the platelet-rich plasma. But we have to be realistic too. It can't all be completely natural and let's boost our cells and, So many of our patients come in and they say, yeah, that sounds great, but that's going to take 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And I need a quick fix. I don't feel like myself. I don't like how I look.
Yeah.
And of course, we have other things that we can help them with there. We do our wrinkle relaxing injections. We do really, really careful filler injections. I think the way we do them in our clinic is the way they should be done.
Yeah.
And that's not just a menopause thing, but again, so many of my patients come to me because they're in menopause or in perimenopause, and they don't like who they see in the mirror anymore, and it's getting them down.
Yes.
And I love to be able to give somebody back a little bit of a confidence boost, or remind them how lovely they are, and a couple of little tweaks can can lift a person so much.
Yeah, totally. And it's never about changing the person or anything. It's about just really optimizing them for the age that they're at. And I know that's
100%.
That's the...
And you'll find that the majority of patients that's exactly what they're asking for.
Exactly.
I want to just look like me. I don't feel I look like me anymore. I get it, totally.
Yeah, that's great, Charlotte. And in terms of other things around about menopause, perimenopause, a lot of people are starting to look at supplements and things like that.
Yeah.
What are your opinion on those sorts of things?
Again, I've been trawling the data. There is very, very little out there.
Yeah.
So for me, there are 3 key things. One is zinc. We haven't really gone into hair loss in any big way, but hair loss, even if you're not taking a testosterone supplement, hair loss, excess shedding, this is a really big hit to confidence in midlife, let me tell you. When your hair doesn't do what it used to do and it was your crowning glory.
Yes.
So the big one for hair is zinc. Again, in menopause, have your bloods done. Find out if you have any vitamin or mineral deficiencies. For skin, I always say vitamin D.
Sure.
We actually have an awful lot of evidence that vitamin D and skin health are intricately linked.
Yes.
But also bone health. Vitamin D is very important for bone health.
Yeah.
And then the third one is vitamin B. And that's all the vitamins.
Yes. Yeah.
But all the B vitamins. That is very important for connective tissue, but it's also really good for brain health, so cognitive health. They're the 3 key ones for me.
And then the big thing that I always get asked, and I have my own opinion on it, but what about collagen drinks in menopause? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm always afraid to say what I really think about these because
Which is what?
This is such a huge industry in its own right. Collagen supplements. So my understanding of collagen is that it's quite a large molecule. And my question is, how is it going to cross the gut? So if I am taking collagen in through my gastrointestinal tract, how is it going to get across my gut? And collagen itself cannot cross your gut. But I have a gastroenterologist friend who tells me that it's brilliant for gut function.
Yes.
In that, it'll get you regular.
Yes.
Because it literally goes in one
there.
end and comes out the other.
Yeah.
And here's another question. Even if they got collagen through the gut, where's it going to go?
Exactly.
How's it going to get to your skin? You know what I mean?
How does it know it somehow manage to find its way just to the skin, not to the heart to cause fibrosis, not to the liver?
Exactly.
I agree completely.
No, I'm afraid. I do think there are amazing things we can do to manage our gut health that will have a positive impact on our skin. Absolutely. Yeah. But I really do feel that collagen supplements are taking money from people, and I don't know. I worry about it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, I think that the only thing is in vegan, people who don't get much hydroxyproline from animal proteins.
No, that's a very good point.
That is one thing, but a vegan is never going to take an animal-based collagen drink anyway.
Exactly.
So
bone broth and all of those things are not going to work for them anyway.
Exactly. So yeah, I agree completely. And I think a lot of the time these collagen drinks are basically fancy forms of vitamin C that are just very expensive. Yeah. Which is a cofactor in collagen production anyway. So
exactly. Yeah. So if you want to look, it's a controversial one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And so that's supplements. What about other lifestyle things that people can be doing? Thinking about general lifestyle and maybe gut health.
I'm not a lifestyle expert at all, but there are 2 things that occur to me. Number 1 is gut health and skin health. are so closely linked that actually I've been surprised in the last 5 years with how strong the evidence is.
Yes.
So I am not a nutritionist, and we have a mutual friend who's an amazing nutritionist. But if your gut is working well, that will have a very positive effect on your skin.
Yeah.
This is not about, I'm having breakouts, so I must give up dairy and chocolate. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about making sure the flora in your gut is healthy. So prebiotics, probiotics, fermented foods, loads of fruit and veg, fibre, really old-fashioned things in a lot of ways. But what we do know is when gut health is good, skin health improves.
Yeah.
But the other big one, David, I mean, I had a text this week from a really lovely client who had to cancel her appointment because she's going through a really stressful time, and she has developed eczema.
Yes.
And she asked me, why is stress causing my skin to do this? And again, this is something I've been looking into recently. And it's the other thing that happens during menopause is there's another hormone called cortisol, even though it has nothing to do with reproductive health, which is what we associate the other three with.
Yeah.
Cortisol is our fight or flight hormone. Everybody has heard about it. But it's also the hormone that regulates what we call circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So cortisol, we get spikes in cortisol, usually 2 a day. And one of them tells us to start preparing to wake up in the morning. And the other one gives us a boost in the day. And then hopefully by bedtime, your cortisol is relaxing and going down, and you'll have a lovely restful night's sleep. But in menopause, cortisol goes a bit astray.
Yeah.
Presumably because it's also dependent on estrogen,
yes,
like absolutely
yeah,
everything in the female body is.
Yeah.
But there's a new body of thinking, and it's called the brain-skin connection. Cortisol is released from the adrenal gland, but the triggers for cortisol release come from the brain. And cortisol is the stress hormone.
Yeah.
And when you are stressed, it shows in your skin. And cortisol is the reason why.
Yeah.
Cortisol is really inflammatory. It changes the pH of your skin. It is pro-oxidant. So if you're in the sun and your cortisol is flying, you'll get more sun damage than you would otherwise.
Yeah.
It's incredible the effect that it has. So when we talk about lifestyle, and it's not woo-woo to say, go do some yoga. It's actually a really good idea. Anything you can do. So the vagus nerve is getting a lot of time at the moment.
Yes, yeah.
But anything, because the vagus nerve plays a big role in cortisol function. Yeah. Anything you can do to reduce the amount of cortisol in your body when you don't need it is good.
Yeah.
Is good for your skin, is good for your general health, is good for your joints. So, yeah, whether for you that's yoga or learning some vagal nerve techniques or whatever it might be, but also it'll help you get through your perimenopause a little bit easier.
Yeah,
but yeah, that is the other big one that we don't talk about a huge amount.
Yeah, interesting. Say you were on a budget. This is a final question now, Charlotte. If you had one treatment that you could choose from for yourself, what would that be?
Botox.
Botox. Same as me.
Yeah. Honestly, if you want to feel a little bit better, and I would never, 10 years ago, I would never have said this. Yeah. But in terms of if done well, obviously,
of course.
And not in the way it was done 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. And I would love to dispel. Now, there's a myth I would like to dispel, is that Botox gives you a look.
Yes.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Good Botox doesn't.
It doesn't at all.
All people should say when they see you when you've had good Botox done is, gosh, you look very refreshed or rested or whatever. So for me, but so many of the menopausal patients that are coming through now, we're concentrating more on the lower face than the upper face.
Yeah, totally.
It's a really big thing in my group of patients at the moment.
Totally. And any product, if you were on a desert island, you could only pick one thing.
Do you mean a brand name or a type of?
Whatever a brand or a type of product.
Number one for me is sunscreen.
Yeah.
But because I have such difficult, sensitive, reactive skin, finding a sunscreen that works for me is my biggest challenge, and it changes literally every summer. I end up getting a trigger and having to find a new one. But if I could find one that didn't trigger my skin, it would be sunscreen for life.
Yeah, interesting.
And my gentle cleanser.
My
really gentle cleanser.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I could only have, well, anybody who's on a desert island should have sunscreen, shouldn't they?
Exactly. Cool. Thank you so much, Charlotte. That's been really interesting. And how can people get in touch with you? Obviously, through the website.
Through your website, yeah.
And you've got your own Instagram as well, which is...
I do.
At Dr. Charlotte Gribbin.
At Dr. Charlotte Gribbin. But yeah. Great. Most of my patients are coming to see me in Belgravia now, and I just love it there, actually.
Yeah, well, really we love you being there as well. Thanks, Charlotte.
Pleasure.
So that was Charlotte Gribbin, who is a doctor who specialises in menopausal and perimenopausal skin. You can find out more about Charlotte on my website, or you can visit her Instagram, which is at Dr. Charlotte Gribbin. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, then please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to your podcast on.